rejoicing, and a lot of other things that the Mishnah later on. Right. Right. If someone who says someone who did not see the simcha, the rejoicing, someone the sheiva, has never really seen a real rejoicing. It was an unbelievable thing how they lit up Yerushalayim. You'll see with the torches, with menorahs, and they were dancing with torches, and they would sing songs, and the Levium would be playing harps, and there was other musical instruments. There was trumpets, and there was no max on how many instruments were there, and the Levium was singing song, and then there's a whole amazing procession regarding this the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. So one of the key instruments that plays, that might be one of the louder instruments, or one of the very special instruments, was the Khalil, which is the flute. So the Mishnah opens up on 50a. On 50a, what number? Mishnah is 50a. The art scroll is 50a3. So the Mishnah opens up and says, it mentions the Khalil, but it doesn't specifically mean the flute. It means all the instruments that they were playing in the Beit HaMikdash. I think it's because the Khalil is like hollow, like the idea like a flute has that empty, like nekavim, chalulim, chalulim, that cavity, the empty space, that's that hollowness of the flute. That could be one reason why it's called the Khalil. And the Rav, some say that the voice of the Khalil. Good morning, Mark. The voice of the voice of the flute is very loud, and that's why the Mishnah refers to the musical playing by the flute. Some say because they started with the flute and they ended the song with the flute, so it was the first instrument to play. Maybe that's why we refer to the Khalil more than other instruments, because we're not referring just to the Khalil. We're referring to the playing of musical instruments. But what you say? So you're saying it was the Khalil that he created first? Okay, could be. But the question is the fact that he might have created the Khalil, but why would it take center stage when referring to musical instruments here? It has to be something significant. So different commentators are trying to understand why, when you refer to the group of instruments, you name it you call on the name of the Khalil. Okay, is that okay? So something unique about the sound. Some explain the loudness of the sound. I was at a wedding in Baltimore. The chuppah, the ceremony, the only instrument they used was the flute. It was fascinating. It was an amazing chuppah. He controlled the whole thing by a flute. So there's something obviously unique about a flute. So we refer to now, what's the issue? The issue is the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. If it happened now, so every Sukkot has a Shabbat. Sukkot is a 7-day holiday. Now the question is, do you play the flute on Shabbat? Question one. Question two is, right, as Nathan points out, there's something called the Shavut. And Shavut, morning Simon, is the rabbinic from the word of Shabbat. There are rabbinic laws that the rabbis created to protect the Shabbat, rabbinic fences. Many of those rabbinic fences did not apply in the Beit HaMikdash. The rabbis did not apply their rabbinic law fences in the Beit HaMikdash. One reason is because the Kohanim, Mr. Cohen, is very on top of his game, and therefore you don't have to be worried that they're going to make mistakes like the average Jew when you have to protect the whole community. It's a very widespread amount of people, and everyone is on different levels of their alacrity compared to Kohanim. They're known to be zrizim, they're known to be very diligent, and maybe they're more educated, perhaps, the fact that they are Kohanim. So there are different reasons why the rabbis did not apply their rabbinic protection in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, there are certain circumstances they did, but in general, that's the general thing. They did not apply it. But the Chalil, but this rejoicing of Simchat Beit HaShoeva, there's no, the Torah did not tell us that you have to do this level of enjoyment of an honor of the water drawing. The Torah mitzvah is, bring the water on the altar. There's no Torah mitzvah to go ahead and have this level of rejoicing in honor of this occasion. Now, one of the reasons why I would think it became such a big simcha celebration of drawing of the water is, I think, because of the Saddukim, that sect of Jews that only believed in the written law. They didn't believe in the oral law, so they didn't believe in the whole thing of pouring water on the Mizbeach on the holiday of Sukkot. And we have a tradition from Moshe from Sinai as an oral Torah law. They have to pour water on the altar. And therefore, we wanted to show the community we do this with great celebration. We treat oral law of the Torah with such honor and respect. And therefore, we made such a big celebration on the pouring of, on the ceremony, just in getting ready for this drawing of the water. We made in honor of this mitzvah, we made such a great celebration. So therefore, being that this is not, the playing of musical instruments is not an integral part of the temple service, because there's no, for the purpose of drawing the water. Therefore, the rabbis said that you cannot play the musical instrument on Shabbat or on Yom Tov in honor of the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. But what about if you want to go ahead and play musical instruments every day, on a Shabbat or on Yom Tov in honor of the Karban, which there was a special mitzvah that the Leviim who have a mitzvah to sing, and we're going to see in the Gemara, is a part of that mitzvah of singing of the Leviim. Does it have to have the musical instruments, or the singing is the main thing, and the musical instrument is just making their singing a much better singing, but really it's not an integral part. So if the Gemara is going to talk, we'll get to, if the music of the Leviim, when we do the Karban, because when you brought the Karban, when you brought the offering, the daily offering, there was a special mitzvah for Ralph to get up and sing. We'll see, with a certain amount of, and Nathan to go ahead and to sing at the Beit HaMikdash. There was certain, and there's a whole, we'll see, they did the singing with musical instruments. And there was a certain amount, there was a certain amount of minimum instruments, certain amount of caps on instruments. There was a whole thing amazing how every day the Beit HaMikdash was alive and kicking with great rejoicing. And the reason for that, the Rabbeinu Bachai says, because that's where they're doing the service, the daily service, and service of Hashem. Good morning, Rabbi. The service of Hashem has to be done with simcha, has to be done with rejoicing. And therefore, since it has to be done with rejoicing, therefore you have to go ahead and have that singing, and we also have the music. So we're going to see, is the music every day in the Beit HaMikdash an integral part of the singing of Ralph and Nathan, or it's not an integral part? If it's an integral part, we'll see the Gemara is going to say, if it's an integral part, so then you can even do it on Shabbat. And if it's not an integral part, you should not be able to do it on Shabbat. What's the general concern? What is the problem of playing music on Shabbat? So what's the problem? So it's a rabbinic, what? Marat Ayin. What's the Marat Ayin? It looks like,
they also play music.
Okay. But what is the problem why a person in this house can't play music? So the reason why can't I go ahead on this Shabbat play music? So the reason play a flute, what's the problem? Because there's a concern, let's say the famous thing, when you have certain instruments that have certain strings, if they might rip, you might come to fix it. Meaning it was common, I presume, in the old days, things were common that certain things would break. And if you fix it, you're making into a proper utensil. That will be a problem. That will be a biblical violation, morning, Mark, of making an instrument by making something that's not usable as a result of the break, and now you fix it. So
so if it doesn't break, then really it's not a problem.
Right. On a Torah level, there's no problem to play a flute on Shabbat, to go play musical instruments on Shabbat, play piano on a Torah level. On a rabbinic level, the rabbis made this zera, made this fence to, obviously, most probably the rabbis saw that people are into their music, into their instruments. If you're in the middle of playing something and it breaks, and it was common that people would fix it. And
so they say also riding a bicycle, it's not asur, but it's a problem if you get a flat tire and you fix it.
Right. It could be very good. It could be under that concern. Others might say there is problems. Maybe it's more weekday type of activity. The different question exactly what is the issue over there. Exactly.
So flute doesn't really break. A flute doesn't really break like a guitar string.
So maybe it's part of that family of instruments that the rabbis are not going to say that this is better than the other, or I'm not sure exactly if whatever the issue is. So Nathan says this.
Unlikely, but good.
But it could be it's part of. Could be.
Believers unlikely break on. Isn't there a general?
The musical instruments you can't right. It's music instruments that could also be that you can't go ahead and play musical instruments. And then now, so Yom Tov, it's possible that a 7-day Yom Tov, Shabbat and Yom Tov could coincide. Sometimes Yom Tov falls out on Shabbat, and meaning to say, Chol Hamoed, right? Chol Hamoed, there would not be a problem of playing the musical instruments. So some in Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, where they have the first day of Yom Tov, there's only one day, right? So Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, the first 7 days in Israel, the first day is Yom Tov. The next 6 days is Chol Hamoed, correct? So now the next 6 days of Chol Hamoed. So if the first day of Yom Tov also comes out on Shabbat, so then you have 6 days of Chol Hamoed. First day is Yom Tov and also Shabbat. You have 6 days of Chol Hamoed. If the first day does not come out on Shabbat, first day doesn't come out on Shabbat, so what you have is the first day is Yom Tov, and let's say Shabbat comes out on day 3 of the holiday, so that's called Shabbat Chol Hamoed, correct? But we have a Shabbat and Yom Tov not coinciding. If you have Shabbat and Yom Tov not coinciding, then you have 5 days of non-Yom Tov and Shabbat days. So sometimes you'll have 6 days in Israel of the holiday of Sukkot of non-Shabbat Yom Tov, but if they coincide, and sometimes you have 5 days when they don't coincide, correct? So that's what the Mishnah says. So sometimes you will blow the Khalil, the musical instruments, 5 days. You would have 5 days to blow, and sometimes you would have 6 days to blow, depending if Yom Tov came out on Shabbat came out on Yom Tov or not. That's what the Mishnah states.
You theoretically could have also blown it on Yom Tov.
If you could, but you can't blow it on Shabbat and you can't blow it on Yom Tov. So now you can't blow the musical instruments in honor of the Simchat Beit Shoeva. You can't blow it on Shabbat and you can't blow it on Yom Tov. So every 7 days Sukkot, you could have either Shabbat and Yom Tov come on the same day, and therefore you have 6 days that you could blow, or they don't come out on the 7th day, so you have 2 days of that level of holiness days, and you have 5 days of blow. That's what the Mishnah states on 58. 50, HaChalil, this flute, or this which represents, he's the representative of the musical instruments. I wanted to say, here we have the Khalil, the flute represents the instruments. We have a mitzvah called Bikurim, that we have to give the 7 fruits of the land of Israel to David, the Bikurim to the Kohen. And the question is, why only the first fruits of the Bikurim, of these 7, the dates, the figs, the pomegranates, right? And why only these 7 got to give the first fruits? Why don't we have to give, good morning, Why don't we have to give the fruits of the apples and the oranges also to Kohen? So I wanted to say, because you give the best, these 7 are the best fruits of Israel. They represent all the fruits. But sometimes you you use this to represent others. That's the idea also of the Chalil. It represents all let's say, according to the opinion, it's the best of the instruments, and therefore it's representing the instrument. So Chalil, Chamisha, Vishisha. The Mishnah says sometimes you're going to have the instruments for 5 days, which is the most years you're only going to be blowing it 5 days, because most years Shabbat and Yom Tov do not coincide, right? Shabbat, the first day of the holiday, is not generally Shabbat. Therefore, you will have Shabbat, you'll have Yom Tov day 1, and whatever day Shabbat, you'll have 2 days of the 7 that you will not blow the instruments. You won't play the instruments. Zeh Chalil shel Beit HaShoeva. This is the Chalil of the Beit HaShoeva. She'eino docher, it does not push away lo at the Shabbat, lo at the Yom Tov. Not Shabbat and not Yom Tov. Now, comes the Gemara. Now we're turning the page. We are on 50b. Itma. Found Itma. Rav Yehuda of Rav Eina. Rav Yehuda and Rav Eina, they had a dispute in what is the proper text in the Mishnah. What do you call this simcha? Do you call this Simchat Beit HaShoeva, as we call it? It's the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. Or is it called Simchat Beit Chashuva? Is it called Simchat Beit HaShoeva? How do you refer to this ceremony, the celebration that we do in honor of the water that we're going to be drawing for the mitzvah of pouring on the mizbeach the water? So the Mishnah, the Gemara exactly is going to discuss this right now. Nathan's point. Simchat, so Chad Tani Shoeva, Chad Tani Chashuva. One says that it refers to Simchat Beit HaShoeva. If the literal translation, Shoeva is to draw. It's the Simcha of the drawing. Shuvim, right? If you drew water, you cannot make a mikvah from water that was shuvim that you drew. You have to go ahead, it has to be naturally collected, and then you could go ahead and pour into it. You could add, once you have 40 sub, then you could pour into it. But exactly. And once it's chashuvah, we know chashuvah means important, unique, special. So there are 2 different ways that they refer to this celebration. And comes the rabbi, and comes Oma Mazutra. Mazutra says, I want to tell you, whichever way you slice it, whichever way you read it, whichever text you have, they're both correct. It's not like sometimes you could have different opinions. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel. How do you light the menorah? Do you do 8 candles the first night or 1 candle? So there's only one way you go. I mean, we're not going to say you can do either way. There's a certain way you have to go. So, but here we're saying they're both correct in this text. Whichever text you say, there's no mistake. The one who has the text that says shoeva, there's no mistake. It makes sense. The text makes sense. The one who has the text chashuva is also not making a mistake, because both have sources for it. Both have very good what to stand on. And the Gemara, and he explains, the one who says shoeva is not making a mistake, because the ksiv ushaftem mayim b'sason. The word shoeva is going on the pasuk that you will draw the water with happiness. So it makes a lot of sense. When we refer to the celebration in honor of the drawing of the water, we'll call it Simchat Beit HaShoeva, because it's referring to the drawing of the water, and the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Yishaftem mayim b'sason. The whole point, what is this whole celebration about? Because we're going to do the midst of the drawing of the water, which will be putting on the mizbeach. So they call the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. Tosfos points at
Is there one of the 4 Jewish New Years that relates to water?
Yes, that B'chag, Sukkot, and that's perhaps the reason why did Hashem give this mitzvah to draw the water and put on the mizbeach? Because one reason is because on Sukkot we are judged on the world is judged on water, how much water will be coming to the world. So Hashem wanted to give us a mitzvah connected directly with water, and in that merit you'll have a great year of water. So that's the idea of, that's also the idea perhaps of the agricultural products of Sukkot, the lulav, the etrog, these items that need a lot of water, that by taking these products that grow by water and you use the mitzvah, Hashem will give a blessing to you. So, Uman de Tani, now Tosfos points out, if you look at the top Tosfos, Chad Tani Sho'eva in the right corner, he says, B'Yerushalmi Mefaresh. In the Yerushalmi, they have a different understanding of why it's Sho'eva. Not because that of the idea of the drawing of the water. Good morning. Not because of the drawing of the water, but because of the drawing of Ruach HaKodesh. Hashem gave people as a result of this great celebration, when you're happy, when you're celebrating, when you're enjoying, when you're in a good mood, that's when you can get Shekhinah. That's when you can get divine, of people who are depressed, people who are down. You don't receive divine revelation and Ruach HaKodesh in that state. And therefore it's called, they say that Yonah, the famous Navi Yonah that we read on Yom Kippur, Yonah with the whale, he got his Nevuah. That was where he clicked in. He would reach level of Simcha, and that's what Hashem gave him. At that point, he gave him certain special holy Ruach HaKodesh. That's what Tosfos says. If you look at the Tosfot, the top Tosfot, Misham Yefarish, Misham Shoavim Ruach HaKodesh. You draw, sometimes you could draw water, sometimes you could get Ruach HaKodesh. As it says, Sheshchina Shoreh Mitoch Simcha. Divine presence, and by the way, it's also in a home. It says that a home, a husband and a wife, Ish v'isha, there's a Shekhinah, there's the divine presence between husband and wife. But that's only if they treat each other properly, when there's harmony in the house. If there's no harmony in the house, there's no Shekhinah in the house. I did a rabbi call to one of my students' house. They weren't getting along properly. One of them was acting very inappropriately. And I said, God is outside this house. He's not in this house. The way they were, the lady was throwing things and doing things, saying things, whatever that happened to be the lady's problem that time. Different situations, but they needed help. They needed therapy. Whatever. Thank God they're still married and doing all right. But sometimes how can Hashem be in such a home where people are acting inappropriately? There has to be simcha. There has to be happiness. Right, fire, exactly. So the Tosfos says, the Shekhinah it dwells with simcha, diksiv, vayhi kenagain hamenagain. When they were playing the instrument, Batiyah Lav Ruach Hashem. That's when David HaMelech, that's when he had the Ruach Hashem. It brings the story of Yonah ben Amittai. He went to Yerushalayim. Yonah went like all the other Jews in the land of Israel. They went to Ola Regel. At that celebration in honor of the water, Sharta Lav Shechina. He got the divine presence. So that's why it's called Simchat Beit HaShoeva. And perhaps the fact that we could refer to it as Simchat Beit HaShoeva, not everyone's a Yonah, but obviously the point is everybody could draw great things. So the Gemara says, Uman de Tanech HaShuva, and the one who says that it's called Simchat Beit HaShuva, why is it's not lo mishtabesh? It's not making a mistake. Why not? The Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says that the pouring of the water on the mizbeach is mitzvah chashuvahi. It's a very special mitzvah. Uba'a misheshet yemei breshit. This was prepared already from Sheshet Yemei Breshit, as we saw in the Gemara earlier, that in the 6 days of creation, Hashem made a hole in the ground by the temple area. That hole in the ground was there. That when you go ahead and you build the altar and the mizbeach, and you're gonna have to pour water and pour wine on the mizbeach, then it's gonna drain down into that hole. That's gonna go all the way down. It's gonna go all the way down, and the fact that Hashem prepared this hole during creation for this mitzvah that you're going to do later on, just shows you the power, the importance. Right. That's a good point. That maybe they'll have some other idea why the hole is there, but not because of the mitzvah of pouring on the mizbeach. But if they're going to say, if it's not written in the pasuk, if it's not in the text, it's not there. That was their mentality. So therefore, it's some other purpose.
Isn't that the whole this holy water bathroom also?
Yes. It's also over there.
No.
Right. So the Gemara says, Tana Rabbana, we're now on 50b1. Tana Rabbana on the bottom of the page. Tana Rabbana. HaChalil. The Chalil, the musical instruments, the instruments in the Beit HaMikdash, doche et Shabbat. So now we're talking about what happened. The Mishnah said unequivocally, no argument, everybody unanimous, that you did not play the musical instruments on Shabbat and Yom Tov in honor of the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. You would not go ahead and play the instruments in the Beit HaMikdash in honor of that. However, by the way, they had a whole celebration where they made bleachers for the women at the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, and it was a whole for the whole community to be involved. Now, right, you could see the torches. They see how they had these big high lights going up, big lights that lit up the whole lit up Yerushalayim. That you're going to see more as the Mishnah is going to discuss later on. Tana Rabbana. Now we're getting, till now we were discussing in honor of the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. We said you cannot play musical instruments on Shabbat. Only during the Chol HaMoed, not Shabbat, not on Yom Tov, could you play musical instruments on the Shabbat in honor of this water drawing ceremony. What about every day, every Shabbat in the Beit HaMikdash, where there's a mitzvah for the Leviim to sing in the Beit HaMikdash when they brought the Karban, the Karban, the Shabbat Karban? So what do you do? Do they play the instruments in the Beit HaMikdash on Shabbat? If it's not Shabbat, today they'll be playing instruments in the Beit HaMikdash. The whole band going on in the Beit HaMikdash. A proper band, not the bands that go on today. A real beautiful, proper band with many singers, many soloists. There's a lot of soloists. There's a lot of people involved. Tana Rabbanan, HaChalil doche et Shabbat. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says musical instruments are allowed to be played in the Beit HaMikdash in honor of the singing, to accompany the singing of Nathan and Ralph. And the Leviim singing, they're going to go ahead. What? And override Shabbat. The rabbis did not institute their prohibition of playing musical instruments. They did not. It override the Shabbat. The Chachamim Omrim, we're going to see. The Gemara is now going to explain in a minute. The Chachamim Omrim, Af Yom Tov ein adocha. Not only you cannot play the musical instruments with the singing of the Leviim on Shabbat, even Yom Tov, which is not the same level of Shabbat in stringency, meaning, what do I mean to say? If a person violates Shabbat and he's warned, there's a death penalty for certain malachot on Shabbat. Of course, music is not a biblical prohibition on Shabbat, but the Shabbat in general, the fact that the punishment in Yom Tov does not have that level of punishment of death for violating Yom Tov, so it's not the same level in certain sense, but nevertheless, even though general prohibitions on Yom Tov are prohibited on Shabbat, we find there's certain allowances for food and certain things. But so therefore, comes Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chacham say, not only you cannot play the musical instrument on Shabbat, you can't play it on Yom Tov either. Okay, now as Mark said, what's behind this? What's behind the dispute over here? So the Gemara explains. Omer Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said, Machluket b'shir shel karban. He wants to say, now the Breita is very vague. The Breita just says, they're arguing regarding musical instruments on Shabbat. Now we know there are different possible times this could be either referring to a regular Shabbat, or could it be referring to the Shabbat? Is it referring to an honor of the Levium song on the Korban? Or is this referring to musical instruments regarding Simchat Beit HaShoeva? Is the argument here regarding Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the special ceremony that's found on Sukkot, that we go ahead and we play musical instruments? Are they arguing there if you could do that on Shabbat? Or are they arguing regarding a regular Shabbat? Nothing to do with the Simchat Beit HaShoeva ceremony. Just in general, can every Shabbat of the year, can we play musical instruments when the Levium are singing their song in honor of the service in the Beit HaMikdash? So that's what Rabbi Yosef is going to say. Rabbi Yosef is going to say, they're not talking about Simchat Beit HaShoeva. He's going to say, Simchat Beit HaShoeva, nobody would suggest that you could play the music in honor of Simchat Beit HaShoeva on Shabbat. You could have possibly, what you could say, there's an opinion, he says, that only you could play the music for the Korban, for the offering, but not for the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. And the other opinion says you can't even play the music for the Korban. Now he explains. Machluket b'shir shel Korban. The argument of whether you're allowed to or not allowed to play musical instruments on Shabbat or Yom Tov in the Beit HaMikdash is referring to the song, not for the pouring of the water. It's the song of the Korban, the offering, that the general offering that's brought in the Beit HaMikdash, the Tamid Shel Shachar, the morning Korban. Every day we had a Korban in the morning. That's why the davening in the morning corresponds to the morning offering. The davening in the afternoon corresponds to the afternoon offering. So when they brought the offering every morning, let's say today, the Beit HaMikdash, they would have music when they would bring the morning offering, the Tamid, and they would have music in the afternoon. And the Levium would be singing, and they would have the music. Now, so Rabbi Yossi Sava, Rabbi Yossi holds, the one who says you could play the music on Shabbat, he says, Ika Shira B'Kli. When the Torah required that the Leviim should sing, the psukim that indicate that avodah, the certain types of responsibilities of Leviim, they were the gatekeepers in the Beit HaMikdash, and they took care of the gates, the opening, closing the gates, and they were the ones who sang. So when the Torah says you have to sing, the Leviim have to sing, does the Torah also require that part of singing, it's not just singing. It's not a song if you don't have music. It's not the real deal. Or is it, it's the real deal, the Leviim fulfill their mitzvah without a musical instrument? Or could the mitzvah of song in the Beit HaMikdash be fulfilled without instruments? Or the only way you really do the job, it's only called singing. It's not really a singing if you don't really have it. What is the intent of the Torah? So Rabbi Yossi holds, Ika Shira, when the Torah says you have to sing, what does the Torah mean? You got to sing and you have to have instruments. Without the instruments, it's not singing. Therefore, v'avodahi, it's part of the service. It's service called avodat avodah. The Leviim are doing service. And the song is a service. If that's a service, part of the service, so therefore dochet the Shabbat. It could override the Shabbat like other services. The offering of the Korban is the service. It's docha Shabbat, and that's even biblical things. You're doing shchitat. You're slaughtering the animal. The Torah says the slaughtering of an animal, which is forbidden on Shabbat, but it's allowed to slaughter an animal for the Korban on Shabbat. So certainly this rabbinic law of the prohibition of not playing music was allowed to go ahead and do that on Shabbat in the Beit HaMikdash. However, Rabbanan Savri, Rabbanan know, Nathan and Ralph, our Leviim, could accomplish their mitzvah without any musical instruments. Just by singing their beautiful voices. Therefore, it's not an integral part of the service. It's not an integral part of the service. You can't do it on Shabbat. Therefore, however, Rabbanan Savri, Ikashira Bapeh. The main song is as being a soloist, your mouth. That's called sing. You sing without any instruments. It's interesting. Here we are in the days of Sirah. What do you call acapella music? Right there. There's a whole question. Is it appropriate? Not appropriate? So it's interesting if we could connect a little bit, maybe to our Gemara a little bit. We could think about it in those terms. Is it really considered a song without instruments? Or is it not considered a song without instruments? At least we see on the Beit HaMikdash level, there was this discussion. Now, there are some rabbis that say you shouldn't do it, and some rabbis that say it's allowed, a cappella music, Now, Rabbanan Savri, Ikashira B'peh. The main song is with the mouth, and therefore Allah, what did it say? That's the question. There are some rabbis, I can't tell you in the Sephardi world, some rabbis in the Ashkenaz world that would allow it. Some rabbis said no. The whole point, you're missing the whole spirit of the whole thing. But even if we don't come from the fact of the spirit, from this Gemara, it's point to the opinion that says main song is with your mouth. See that he did the song, even we'd have no music, but it's considered a song. Lava vodehi. See, he holds the Rabbanan hold that the main, it's not an integral part of the service. And therefore, the Shabbat, but it cannot push away the Shabbat. But the song of the Simchat Beit Shuvah, just to accompany the water celebration, the Divrei HaKol is Simcha. It's just extra Simcha, and it's not Dochet Shabbat. It does not push away the Shabbat. Okay, we should be Zochet to have the Beit HaMikdash back, Levium back. Also, yeah. Chana Barakah Shomer Ratzah Kodesh Baruch Hazakas itself. If you hear about the mission, Adonai Chafetz Mashikoy Adil to Ravi Adir. Name. Name. Heshvarah. Such a beautiful crowd. Hope everyone back tomorrow and plus.
So interesting. So, you got music, especially if people don't understand. No, sound change the structure of cells. Well, broken cells, cancer.
Well, it's for music therapy also, because the whole field.
Well, you see, music therapy will elevate his mind and spirit.
But affect the health.
You got health, of course, because you got to help mind. And then you have the whole right machines back in the day, when actually would repair cells. And they've even analyzed water under the microscope of certain frequencies. I mean, you should see how beautifully you've got clumpy, dirty water that will get into the idea of music in the gosh, yes, voices or something, it doesn't equal what the actual instruments can do. It changes the actual body, heals the body, and puts them in a higher state of mind. And this is all you could actually, it's unbelievable to study. So try not study sound. It's unbelievable, and you can see it on the microscopic level too. You can see how the cells change and group with the music.
It says that music is one of the 7 wisdoms of the world.
I mean, think about it. It was brought down that it was one of the first things that man created was a musical instrument.
Right, beautiful.
Really? Well, all the creations, they all talk about music.
So when I walked in on the thing of saying that he shouldn't be depressed, so something sad, so bad happens, you have to react to it.
Right, that's true. But really,
What's the essence of that? I mean, I could give you my own thing on this to say, you have to have faith in Hashem, that, you know, it's for a reason, and it's gonna be for the best, and it's gonna come out, and it's gonna be good, but the idea is that you're not supposed to harp on something that's.
but for them not to harp and not to allow, you know, of course, the person, maybe they feel bad for that certain amount, but not to, I presume this feeling bad is for getting depressed. Maybe it's different levels of feeling. First, a person feels bad about a situation, but to get depressed is much more of a serious,
Well, yeah, they get a little deeper.
deeper, that leads to a lot of,
Yeah. No, it definitely can lead to bad things. The person thinking, you know, his mind. But so you have to kind of get over the sadness. And when you're not, it's hard to be happy. Again, the Succah is a little difficult in a situation like that. I guess you could just, you know, rekindle the faith.
right, but I think like we said, what you said first, really the ideal is that a person should reach a very high level to not to get, you know, even to accept it with happiness, which is very hard. I think I think Rav David Feinstein, one of the hardest things that says, just like a person makes a bracha on the good with simcha, he's supposed to make a bracha on the bad with simcha. He says, a person reach that level is very hard, but obviously it's something that if a person realizes that everything is done for the best, so then they would not get.
I guess you have to also make the effort, you know, try to make things, whatever it is, the situation, make it better.
Exactly, make it better and to realize, it's very challenging, but to realize that whatever happens is for the best, then a person would be able to accept it and therefore move forward.